name is Jane Klein. I'm a trail ambassador for Friends of the Wissahickon, and I've been out walking and talking with experienced artists and people who would just like to try their hand at sketching. And today we're going to bring you a virtual way to do sketching on the Wissahickon. Whether you are experienced or, like I said, you just like to try your hand, being out by the river, hearing the river, smelling the smells of the forest, feeling the breeze, hearing the birds. It's just a great way to be out enjoying nature, trying your hand at sketching without the expectation of creating a masterpiece. So today I'd like to share with you the tips and tricks that I use to create a sketch, and hopefully I can get you on your way. First, I want to show you the spot I've chosen for us to go today. See if you can guess where it is. If you guessed Kitchen's Lane, you're correct. This is under the bridge looking south. So first let's talk about the tools I recommend using for your sketch. I like to begin with charcoal because it allows me to work quickly and it keeps my lines very loose and free, and I like that. And right beside that is the trusty kneaded eraser. That's K-N-E-A-D-E-D, kneaded eraser, like the bread. And that works really well with charcoal and pencil for picking up and editing. As I get further along into the sketch, I like to use pencil too to add detail. So these pencils are named for the quality of their line. The ones I'm using are ranging from 9B all the way down to B. Sometimes I use HB. B stands for black, which gives you a very dark, rich line, 9B being the darkest. There's also 2H, and H stands for hard. It creates a very light line because the lead is harder. So let's start here. Start by creating an envelope. In other words, define the areas of your drawing. Just like you would use a viewfinder on your camera, use an imaginary crop to determine what you're going to include in your drawing. I'll often take a few photos while I'm sketching outside so I can use them for reference later. Whoa, now that I have my boundaries, I can sketch in the basic shapes that I'm seeing. So I like to pay attention to shapes. And you can see here, I've already got two fairly strong triangles. I'm working quickly, trying to look back and forth from my subject to my paper. And keeping it nice and loose and easy. Okay, so here's what I have. Now, I notice that what I've drawn is not exactly the same as what I'm looking at. And at this point, I have to decide whether I want to make it look closer to reality. But I decide I like it the way it is. And that's the decision of the artist. That's your prerogative. Next, I want to identify where the light is coming from. The next few slides are by an artist named William Troust Richards, who was born in Philadelphia in 1833, and he became a prominent American watercolorist. This is a painting of Devil's Pool. It's called The Forest, and it was painted in 1868. You can notice how the light is coming from the left, and he uses light to create interest and shadow and drama. If you want to add depth to your drawing, this is a good way to start. So you can see he's got the light coming in from the left, a lot of light in the center of the painting, and then he's framed it with these dark edges. The next slide is called the Wissahickon, and it was painted in 1872. The light seems to be coming from the back of the painting. The trees on the left are illuminated, and the trees on the right are in shadow except for the edges and the tops. And then the rest of the painting is pretty much in shadow. So add shadow. Let's take a look at what we have here. The light is coming from the right, and it's casting brightness on the trees in the back. The sky and the reflections on the water are obviously the highlights of the photograph. And then in the back here, there's just a tiny sliver of light that I might want to include when I'm at the end of sketching. And the rest of it is pretty much in shadow. So let's go through and add some shadow. First, I decide I don't really like that line, and you can see now I'm using the kneaded eraser, and it picks up pretty easily and allows me to edit the line, which in this case, as you can see over here, is closer to reality. It kind of opens up the front. Not that I'm not trying to create reality, because I want to create whatever is most interesting to the eye. So I'm going to add shadow on the right hand side because there's a lot of that going on. This area is pretty dark over here, and I'm going to add my rocks. You can add detail as you go along. Again, I try to work quickly. You can see there's a lot of darkness in here, and it's okay to use your finger too with the pencil and the charcoal. And then as you add darkness, it's kind of like magic, the way the light areas will begin to pop. Next thing I want to just bring to your attention is if you use diagonals, they can really bring a lot of interest into the painting or the sketch. So in this case, going back to the Devil's Pool, if you start anywhere in this painting, you can see how the artist used diagonals to allow the eye to move around in the painting and create interest. So wherever I go in here, you can see that there's diagonals at work, and it keeps you interested in what you're looking at. Okay, so you can see that this sketch has a lot of really nice diagonals, and it's based on what I'm looking at, and I'm moving around. My eye is moving pretty easily through the sketch. But even if you don't have them, you can add them if you want. So here you can see I've added some more depth by using shadow, getting a little darker here. And even more. I've added more depth by using those great bead pencils with the soft lead. They produce the strong, rich black shadows. And then, let me go back. Here, this looks like land to me. So it's not yet water. And I've got to look at the water, look at the tiny little ripples that it creates. And then if I go back here, I've added even more depth by adding pencil into these areas. And with the water, I've used short strokes that kind of allow me to imitate the ripples that I see. And another trick is to add more detail in the foreground, because actually your eye does pick up more detail as you're closer. And that gives the illusion of depth, and it ends up taking you back into the painting. And then finally, as a last step, I've added this tiny little sliver of light just to guide the eye back and then forward again. So to review, you want to create an envelope and a sketch using basic shapes. Be aware of diagonals, determine where the light is coming from, start to fill in the shadows. And as you add shadows, you will notice that the light areas emerge. Use short strokes for the water, more shadow and detail, and let the foreground come into focus. This will give the sketch some depth. I hope you've enjoyed our time on the creek, and I hope to see you sketching out there soon.